Mexamerica. So let's get through this. We're going to just kind of introduce Mexamerica, dig in a little deeper next time. So the pattern that we had today, where we had a lecture, then about a noon, 12:15 quiz, that will be very much the pattern next time. So that's just a 411, so that you don't have to get here till noon. So you can wait till noon to come to take the quiz. All right, so here is our good friend Mexamerica. So Mexamerica, of the regions we've talked about, this one's definitely got the more variation, by far the most variation in its physical environments. And so it goes from various vegetation types, but the key thing here is it's very undulating as far as the topography. And we can see that here. We've been kind of talking about these little hills and flatlands. Here's a particular area that has a lot of various change in its topography. Some flat areas, some valleys, some very steep slopes, some very large mountains, and so forth. Some river valleys, all those things that we saw introduced there in our discussion. But the kind of a physical geography, kind of to explain this region, where it's located. And so first off, we've got the Rio Grande right through there. The Rio Grande, as you can see, plays a key role in the shape of this particular region. So you can see how it roughly follows the shapes of the Rio Grande from its headwaters to its mouth. Further, you can kind of see how it scoots to the one side of the Great Plains. So this is not going to be covering the Great Plains at all. So Texas is one of those states that's got three different regions coming through. It's kind of got this coastal Gulf South part, it's got the breadbasket part, and it's got the heavily Mexican/Hispanic influence part. So we've got this area, we've kind of explained that pretty well here. Then we come through southern Arizona. What's going on here is we've got the Grand Canyon, the Colorado River, but a large Native American population. And so this is all falling where we see large amounts of Latinos/Mexicans. And of course, we're going to see them all throughout this area there. But then we go up and we sneak up and we get all the San Joaquin Valley. And so the reason why we learn the San Joaquin Valley is because it's key to understanding the shape of this particular nation, and of course going to differentiate it from Ecotopia, Empty Quarter as well. So this particular region is very much defined by physical boundaries as well. Finally, we go around, we pick up the Baja Peninsula, which we see there. And so our map quiz items come up here on this particular map. We can now understand the particular shape of this region. Further, this region doesn't go much into Mexico. And so my colleague right around the corner, Rick Bond, who teaches a Latin American course, caught wind that I was covering Mexamerica. And so he panicked because he's teaching a Latin American course, and we should not be covering the same thing. It's okay, Rick. I'm not going to be covering much of Mexico. So the only part of Mexico I'm going to cover is this little sliver right there along the border. So once again, one of the things they mentioned were maquiladoras. These maquiladoras are these facilities located just across a river, just across the Rio Grande. So what they can do is they can then have a facility close to the United States, close to our consumers, but much cheaper as far as the labor if you're just on the other side there in Mexico where labor costs are significantly lower. And so one of the things that you probably had to map this bizarre place called Laredo. Just across the river from Laredo is an even bigger city, Nuevo Laredo, New Laredo. And it's even bigger because it's largely one of those maquiladora sites that serves the population just on the other side of the river. And so other things we can look at there, I think we did the most of it. All right, so there is Mexamerica physically. Now let's look at some precipitation, like we always do, some precipitation, some temperature characteristics. All right, first off, what are we looking at? All right, so brown and yellow means dry. So as they perfectly noted, this is extremely dry location. It's dry for a few different reasons, but the reason we're just going to focus in on, it's a desert. And so it's dry because it doesn't get a lot of moisture. And so because it doesn't get a lot of moisture, it doesn't get a lot of cloud cover. So there aren't a lot of cloud cover during the day, and there's not a lot of cloud cover at night. So what that means is they get extremely hot days, but extremely cold nights. Another thing that was mentioned during that presentation. So extremely hot nights. Why does it get so stinking hot? You got this sun that's coming and it's touching the surface and it's reaching the surface. There are no clouds in the way. that sun is just coming screaming through the atmosphere, and so it essentially then heats up the surface. There is absolutely nothing in the sky that's going to block that solar radiation from coming, and so thus, because of that, it gets extremely hot. Now, the opposite of that, at night it gets extremely cold because clouds do a good job of acting like a blanket. And so what happens is the sun heats the earth, and then the earth heats the atmosphere. And so what clouds do is they act like a blanket. When you're cold at night, you put on a blanket. What that does is it traps your body heat. Your body's radiating heat. It traps that heat, thus keeping you warm. Clouds do the same thing. And so no night clouds is going to mean that you're going to have temperatures drop very, very quickly overnight. As that air goes through the atmosphere quite quickly, that heat goes through the atmosphere quite quickly and cools down. And so that's why cowboy movies, it's always hot during the day, they're wearing a bandana, they're sweating, they're all tuning all the time, and then at night they're all huddled around a fireplace, singing their little cowboy tunes. The reason why that's the case is because of that climate in which it's extremely hot during the day, extremely cold at night. Same thing kind of plays out in the Middle East as well. So extremely dry, we know that. Anomalies of where we do not see the extremely dry temperature or precipitation characteristics. Anomalies means places that we don't see dry conditions.
By the tip of Texas where the river is?
Here?
Yeah.
Okay, so here, the reason why you're going to get precipitation, right next to a water body. We know, Alaska and Hawaii aren't really here, but Mexico is here, and so, we don't have a water body anywhere around here. So down here, you've got a water body. It's going to, of course, bring precipitation inland. If you want to trick someone, tell them you've got a coastal property in Arizona, because it does not exist. They do not live on an ocean. So George Strait's wrong. Never mind. Anywhere else where you see?
So there's a part in Arizona and maybe Utah. Nope. Oh.
Colorado.
Colorado.
Is that Denver?
Denver's right about there.
Never mind. I didn't do that.
Yeah, but
What's
there
that
is
elevation?
water right there. Is that because of the rapids? What is that?
Rocky Mountains. Rapid precipitation.
We'll go to, we'll look at temperature. We'll look at temperature. So now we see orange is cooler than pink. So here we also find this area, not only is it wetter, it also has lower temperatures. Its temperatures aren't as high. And it gets really cold in the winter. So you're looking at whatever this place is, it gets a lot of precipitation, but it's cooler. Cooler, the tides don't get as high, and it gets super cold.
What's
brown.
the elevation?
Boom, elevation. So that's the Rocky Mountains. So that's the whole thing is, here's the Rocky Mountains, here's the peaks, the high points of the Rocky Mountains that come right through here. Reason why we do the previous map quiz. And so right through here, we're going to get orographic precipitation. And so this is essentially the air going up to the top of the Rocky Mountains to the highest point, and then cooling, and then condensing and falling back down as rain. And then subsequently, we got the rain shadow that comes all throughout here. So that's just the highland area represented there. And it all makes sense because as you go up in elevation, you get cooler. So it doesn't get as hot here because it's at a higher elevation. So similarly, it gets extremely cold in the wintertime because of that high elevation as well. So it all has to do with topography. So we can see the various topography kind of variation here and its influence on precipitation and temperature. And so for the most part, the quick 411 as far as describing the physical geography and the climate of this area is extremely dry, except for on the edges there where we have the Gulf bringing moisture, and I guess somewhat over here in the Pacific, but also the highland upland area there in the Rockies. So the Rio Grande, once again, it has its headquarters right there and comes down, flowing right out into the Atlantic or the Gulf of Mexico. Distribution of Hispanic or Latino population. All right, let's do it. What we got here? This will be interesting. Oh, yeah, these are good. These are good. All right, so here we got kind of shows this current snapshot as far as where we find different groups. And so the Mexican population quite dispersed, but I show this also because we want to kind of show how this growth here in the South in Dixie as well for the agricultural aid. But boom, you can essentially see the San Joaquin Valley right through here. So once again, you can see that agricultural influence migration to this particular area. So agricultural jobs are no longer being done by people who are born here, native-born people. More often than not, they're by foreign labor, especially Latino labor. And once again, I've said this before, I know this map shows a lot of Mexicans, but I think it should also show down here that there's various types of different groups that come through and migrate. So it's not just all Mexican. In this case, Guatemalan, Costa Rican, Honduran, Nicaraguan. So we're seeing this migration, and they're just using essentially this corridor to come across to the United States. And once again, it's for jobs. I mean, it makes sense why people would want to migrate, leave their home, leaving for jobs. All right, now we're looking at 2012 county level map patterns. All right, we can essentially see right here Mexamerica almost to the T. So you can see Mexamerica, and you can see that Latino influence. But once again, where are these elections going to be focused in on? States that have a good amount of red and a good amount of blue. So you look at Arizona, blue, red, purple, blue. It's definitely one of those states that's going to be up in the air. New Mexico, another swing state. And it makes sense when you got places that have various components within it. Whereas you go to Kansas, you go to Nebraska, you go to Utah, you go to California, you go to New York. You can see that those are much more consistently red or blue throughout much of the state, so they're no longer really swing states. But this here is key to kind of following this area is the Latino population.